For those of you who came tonight, you've come to the last question of the series called the 70 Most Difficult Questions in Judaism. There may be more difficult questions, and if you have any, please write them down. Perhaps we'll talk about them some other time. But the list that I've compiled pretty much consists of very difficult questions that many of us perhaps have wondered as to the answer, some explanation. We began with questions like creation and evolution. We went on to dinosaurs, what happened to them. For those who have not heard it, Baruch Hashem, they are recorded, they are on video. You can see them on the internet, on our website, toraor.net. And B'ezrat Hashem, we will be continuing with the lectures. We will, B'ezrat Hashem, be going on to something else after Pesach, hopefully, unless we're by then in Israel. The question of tonight is about Amalek. And it is very apropos to speak about Amalek on Shushan Purim, the day after Purim. After all, Purim has something to do with Amalek. The question is, why doesn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu destroy Amalek, this evil power that is known to us as Amalek? He asks of us to do so. We are commanded to do so. But it is not just a question about why doesn't Hashem do it. There are really a lot more questions that we need to ask ourselves, that we need to understand in talking about this particular subject. I actually have a list of 10 questions pertaining to Amalek. First question is, why doesn't Hashem do it himself if they're so bad? Eliminate them. The next question, which many people have a difficult time understanding whenever they do read about this commandment, is why does this commandment appear to be so cruel? After all, it asks of us to exterminate, to kill men, women, and children. Now we know that God is compassionate, and the Jewish people are trained to be compassionate and to be kind and generous, and this one therefore stands out. Here we're asked to be cruel, to not have any pity. And then the Torah goes on to say, and don't forget the animals too. What a waste. Animals? What did they do anything? I mean, did they do anything wrong? I mean, so why the animals? Why are there two commandments? Remember and don't forget. Zachor ve'al tishkach. Another question is, well, if we have this commandment of eliminating Amalek, how are we supposed to identify who he is? He doesn't wear a badge, I'm an Amaleki. Right? So how are we supposed to know who he is? We're told Amalek hates us very, very much. So the question is, where does that hatred that he has come from? Another question is, when does Amalek have power over us? When does he control us? Another question is, how are we supposed to defeat Amalek, practically speaking? Why isn't Hashem's chair complete, intact, until Amalek will be finally destroyed? That's what Hashem himself says. My chair, the chair of justice, the chair on which Hashem Kavyachol sits on, is not intact until the day will come when Hashem eliminates Amalek. And the last question is, what will happen in the very, very end to Amalek? Will he be eliminated? How will this happen? When will it happen? In order to properly understand this topic, we have to delve a little bit into the Kabbalah. We have to go back to the beginning of creation. We have to understand some concepts that we've spoken about in the past, but nevertheless we have to review them so we have a little bit of clarity as to the enormity of this task. It's not an easy task, the task of destroying Amalek. It goes back all the way to the very beginning of creation. When Hashem created the world, he also created two powers, two opposing powers, koach hatov and koach hara, the ability to do good and the ability to do evil. Evil being the opposite of good. What is good and what is evil? And I've explained that in the past, that good is not necessarily what we think is good, because that's something that is not very objective. It is very subjective what good is. What may be good to me may not be good to you. The ultimate good is that which brings about the fulfillment of God's will in this world. That which brings us closer to our mission. And therefore evil, or kohot hara, is anything that detracts from our mission, anything that moves us away, or anything that is opposed to doing the will of Hashem. That's in a very simple way of explaining it. You basically have two opposites, complete opposite. One that wants to fulfill the mission, the will of God in this world, and one that does not. And God created these two opposites in order to allow for free will. In order for us to have true free will, there has to be two opposites that will continuously attract us, tempt us, confuse us. That is how we have free will. We have the choice to decide what we want to do. If everything would be clear and obvious and easy, then what's the purpose of creation? Creation has, as to one of the purposes, is to reward man for his making the right decisions. Because after all, there is an afterworld, there is an eternal world, a spiritual world, a world where one will be rewarded for doing his job. We've been taught from when we are kids that this is only a temporary world. The physical world where we come down for 70, 80, 90 years, and that's it. This is not it. It can't be. So short? What is this all about? So I'm not going to go ahead and review and repeat this topic of the purpose of creation. We've covered that before, but partially we must keep in mind that ultimately this is only a temporary world, a world of challenges, and in order to provide a proper challenge there needs to be free will, where one can make choices. What makes it more difficult, however, is that this power called evil is actually given the right, the opportunity to expose its face. The face of evil, unfortunately, has surfaced so many times in our history, through war and killings, brutality. Till this very day, nothing has changed. The names have changed, but people are the same. There are barbaric people today. There are even some cannibals here and there. Cannibals that will eat you up. I mean, they'll feed you first to fatten you up, but then they'll eat you. Yeah. I mean, there is evil. And this evil has many faces, but what is the common denominator? It is against the purpose of creation. And why does Hashem allow this evil to be exposed so strong? In order to hide Him, which is also tied to the idea of enabling free will. I want to hide. I don't want you to know with certainty that I'm around, that I exist. That would make it easy. So in order for Hashem to hide His face a little bit, He allows evil to be exposed, to be strong, to be prominent. Then people wonder, is there really a God in this world with all this evil around? See what I mean? That's what happens when the evil is exposed. It's intentional. To allow free will and to hide Hashem's face, Hashem's hands, Hashem's intervention, or involvement, I should say, in this world. So even though we do see an organized world, everything is beautiful in some ways, it's nice, it's well designed, there still is a certain amount of tohu vavohu. If you read the very beginning of Bereshit, you come across the words tohu vavohu, that right in the very beginning, before creation, before form and shape took place, the world was empty, void, right? Confused. In other words, everything was a mishmash, as they say, until Hashem made an order. He separated light from darkness, separated good from evil. separate male from female. See, everything is two, a two. Day, night, good, evil, purity, impurity. So even though God created the world and organized everything and separated everything perfectly, he allowed man to bring about tohu vavohu again. He allowed man to bring about confusion and emptiness once again into this world. Even though man builds and engineers skyscrapers, those all kinds of things, and some of them are good and beneficial, he also has the ability to do evil, and part of that evil involves bringing about that emptiness and confusion to the world. And what is emptiness? Emptiness of faith, emptiness of belief in a supreme being. A life, a world which is devoid of a boss. You're onto yourself. A life which is devoid of any meaning. That's tohu vavohu, confusion. Who's to say I'm right and you're wrong? Right and wrong are confused. There's a lack of clarity. Guilty is man for doing that. Because in the subconscious mind, we have a soul. And the soul does know right from wrong. To an extent. It doesn't always have clarity. It cannot always judge perfectly. But given time, given honesty, and given some guidance, any human being, Jew or non-Jew, can come to the truth, can come to know the truth. But unfortunately, man in his power, in his evil power, has chosen to engender, to bring about a tremendous confusion into the world and all this emptiness, especially in the generation of Mashiach, an emptiness of the belief in God. In the very, very beginning, Adam Harishon, the first man, already made the first mistake by not listening to the simple instruction of God. When I say Adam Harishon, I mean his wife too. By not following one simple instruction, be careful with this tree, with this fruit. Don't eat from it. Just one instruction. He failed. What's that whole episode for? It's an important episode. It's not just a story about a serpent enticing, luring a man and woman to go against God's wishes. It is a story of creation. It is a story of humanity. There is an enemy out there who's against you. He's against God. God created him. But he's an enemy. He's a serpent. That's his name in the very beginning of Bereshit. Who is he really? He is the Yetzer Hara. He's the Satan. He's the Malach HaMavet, the angel of death. He has various names depending on his job. And that's his job, basically, to lure you away from your mission. And Adam Harishon made a mistake which many people make today. It's not only his, on a regular basis, to go after his evil inclination. And as a result of that, however, he messed everything up. Now, even though that particular episode is in itself something significant, obviously it represents something, it really represents also the mistakes that we make on a regular basis when we follow the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. In other words, when we do not do the right thing, we don't think things out properly, we don't weigh them properly, or we don't do what Hashem asks of us or expects of us. So that episode represents, or is a manifestation of the mistakes all human beings make. But what's so unique and what's so serious about that particular one, Chet Adam Harishon, is that Adam Harishon had in himself, according to the Kabbalah, the neshamot, the souls of all of humanity. He's one physical body, but just think, his neshama is big. Think of it as big, that contains within it all the sparks, all the potential souls that will eventually come down into the world. Comes along Adam Harishon, the first man, allows the evil inclination to penetrate him, right, to listen to him, to follow it. And as a result of him bringing in, that evil inclination was outside, bringing him in, he now allowed the forces of evil and good to mix. They were separate. Remember, there was order, there was separation. Now he has mixed them all up. Now it's within him, In the body of every human being, the forces of evil at all times are present, fighting each other. Do this. No, I don't want to do this. Do this. Yes, no, yes, no. Constant challenge. It's not outside. It's not apart. It's all mixed together in one place. It makes it hard for people to make decisions sometimes. But it's not just the forces of good and evil mixed in him. It's not only the desire to do this or the desire to do that he has to contend with all the time. It's the neshamot now too. Neshamot right now are mixed. Different kinds of neshamot are all mixed. Good and not so good. Now you may wonder for a moment, how could there be not so good neshamot? Souls, we've spoken about this too. That there are some souls that are more divine and some less divine. Look at a soul as a spark. We all have a human spirit that makes our heart pump blood and the like. But when we talk about the soul, we talk about the divine soul that every human being has. Some are more divine than others. That's the way it was made from the very beginning. Also, to allow for free will, we have to have a little bit of good and bad. So now Adam HaRishon has all the good and bad mixed together. He has allowed it to be all mixed up. And now we have a problem. Well, we have a problem because if it's all mixed up, what's man going to do? How's man going to know to do the right thing? Rabbis even tell us that if we look at it statistically, take a baby born into this world, statistics, use math. What are his chances of being good or bad? The rabbis tell us his chances of being bad are greater than being good. Incredible. Look at the odds against him. The odds are against him. It takes, therefore, some tool to guide him to stay out of trouble. Man needs to have a good upbringing, a good education, good friends, healthy environment. Otherwise, his chances are not very, very good. Hashem, of course, has a mission for humanity. What's the mission? You, human beings, have to rectify this world. I organized it. I want you to strengthen the good over the bad. If you will achieve that, to strengthen the powers of good over evil, you will rectify the world. The only one who's capable of doing this job right is one whose neshama, whose soul is more divine, has more of a concentration of good than evil. If that soul tends to be more evil, he will fail. So Hashem right now has to pick a soul and allow that soul to be the one who will hopefully fulfill this mission. All of humanity as a whole, even though it is incumbent on them to be good and not to be evil, we all have free will, nevertheless, Hashem needs a people, a soul, that will carry out this mission to rectify the world. But all the souls, the good and the bad, are mixed in one place. So how do we do it? It's called the filtering process. If you look at the history of the first generations in the Torah, you will find that the Torah is not given right away. There are no Jewish people in the very beginning. We have a whole bunch of people that will eventually disappeared from the flood. Eventually there's only one family left, Noach. And even Noach doesn't get the Torah, neither does Abraham Avinu or Yitzchak or Yaakov. Righteous people. No, they don't get the Torah. The Torah eventually will be given, and it will provide a blueprint, a guide, a map to the Jewish people, to a nation, to tell them what to do, how to rectify this world, fix it, clean it up. Give the koach of the tov, give the powers of good more power over the powers of evil. And you can only do that, you can achieve that through the Torah, through the fulfillment of mitzvot. So Hashem has to filter out from all this mixture of good and evil on the level of the soul. He has to filter out the evil. So he starts removing, generation by generation, a little bit of the evil. Let's begin with Abraham Avinu. Of all of Terach's kids, Terach, the father of Abraham, only Abraham was a real believer, 100%. Discovered Hashem, discovered God, right? Eventually taught it to other people. The entire his life was devoted to acts of goodness. Great. Is Abraham purified, completely filtered? No. He has a few kids. He has a Yishmael. Yishmael is not the best candidate. Yitzhak is much better, right? We all agree. Is Yitzhak ready to receive the Torah? Yitzhak is almost like an angel. Offers himself to be sacrificed. No. Yitzhak and Rivka eventually get married. They also have some psolet. Let's use the Hebrew word here. Something unrefined in them yet, called Esav, Rivka, Yitzhak. Righteous two individuals, tzaddikim. Nobody has any doubts about how righteous they are. Nevertheless, they still have some psolet, some impurities in them. And those impurities are removed in the name of Esav. Finally, Yaakov arrives at the scene. Yaakov is much purer. Yaakov symbolizes in the Kabbalah Amud Ha'emet, because he's truth. Yaakov is not ready. He has 12 children. And those 12 children are not ready yet either, but they're almost there. They have to go through Egypt. They have to go through an additional refinement. And we explained that it has a little bit to do with the baseless hatred that they still had, the jealousy, the problems which of course were manifested with the selling of Yosef, their own brother. That has to be removed. They have to be refined. They have to be prepared. They have to be subjected to some slavery so they can learn to be servants of God. After all, who wants to be a servant of anybody? So they have to go through a little bit of refinement to prepare them psychologically, mentally, emotionally, whatever you want to say. And that's what happens when they leave Egypt. They're elevated to the highest levels of Kedusha after they remove themselves from the Tumah, the impurity of Mitzrayim, and they're ready to receive the Torah in Chag HaShavuot. So finally, what do we see? We see a nation, a people that has been steadily refined through the generations until there is a soul that is prepared to do Hashem's will. Naaseh v'nishma, they said with all the excitement. We're ready to do it. We're ready to embrace it. To be ready to embrace it without any questions asked. What does it say? That's only because they are refined. They realize that the truth of this. Okay, now let's go to the other side. The powers of evil. As we're filtering all this good, there's some psolet coming out. There's some unrefined souls coming out. And they're being concentrated too. The Jews are receiving a concentrated dose of divine souls. And there's someone out there who's receiving a concentrated dose of unrefined souls. There's unrefined souls everywhere in the world. But there's one area that is concentrated completely. Ra, evil, at its highest form. Who's that? Amalek. And who's Amalek? He's the grandson of Esav, which comes from Yitzchak too. People don't realize, I tell them, Amalek is descendant from Yitzchak. He says, what? Yeah. They come. He's a Semite too, from Yitzchak. So now we have a problem. We have a concentration of evil out there, and we have a concentration of good. And guess what? Amalek will therefore become the arch enemy of the Jews. Just like we have our Torah that tells us what to do, they have their own Torah. What's their Torah? The Torah is to oppose our Torah. It's to go against everything that we are for. It's evil. Remember, it's evil concentrated. It doesn't therefore tolerate, doesn't feel comfortable in the presence of good. Real evil cannot take it when there is a presence of good. That's just the nature of evil. Real evil, concentrated evil. People, remember, are mixtures of everything. But the real evil will not tolerate the Torah, the philosophy, the teachings of good, of being humane, of being nice, compassionate. You say, why not? No, there is an element out there in the world that will not tolerate it, and that's called Amalek. Okay. This Amalek, how is he presented in this world? How does he manifest himself? Where does he draw his power from? The Kabbalah teaches us that every nation in this world has a sar, has a minister, an angel. That's where it derives its strength, And as we all know, all the nations that existed once upon a time, the Babylonians, the Persians, the old Persians, the Greeks, they disappeared. They were around for a while and they left. Their Tsar, their minister, weakened, fell, eventually being replaced by someone else. Those Tsarim, every nation with their minister, did not have that much strength, did not have therefore that much influence, at least for thousands of years. Just for a number of years it had influence, it made its contribution, it came on the scene, did what it was supposed to do, and it left. For some reason, we have here an Amalek that's been around for a long, long time. Just like the Jews. The Jews have been around for a long time. Nothing has happened to us, Baruch Hashem. I mean, we've had our ups and downs. Yes, ups and downs, but we're around. Amalek, in some form, will always be around, and we're gonna understand why in a moment. Amalek has a very interesting minister. It's the Sam himself. It's the Yetzirah himself. It's the Sitra Hara himself. It's the Malach HaMavet, the Satan himself. They have, this power has the most powerful minister of all. Besides, of course, the minister of the Jews. Tremendous koach, tremendous power. But that's not enough to allow him to last so long. You know what the problem is? This minister, this Tsar, you know what he eats for dinner? What gives him power? What fuels him? Acts of evil. Acts of evil that are perpetrated in this world give him power. And he becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and stronger, and he's lasting forever, almost forever. Because that's the way he operates. He depends on this fuel called evil. And if you have this fuel around, he will continue to be around. So the longer he is around, the longer evil, of course, will be around, because he is a manifestation of evil too. So why doesn't Hashem destroy it? Right? That's one of our questions. All this evil. Well, why should Hashem destroy him if the one who's giving him all this power is man himself? Man is the one who's giving him this power, allowing him to continue to exist. It is man's job, therefore, to destroy him. But which man's job? Mostly the Jewish people. Because the Jewish people have that job of letaken ha'olam, to fix this world, to rectify this world, to bring about Hashem's dwelling in this world. And it's only through acts of kindness and goodness, through the observance of Torah and mitzvot, that we are able to drive away these forces of evil, the forces of darkness, through the light of Torah. It is therefore our job, only we can do a good job in this. It does not mean that everybody else is exempt from driving away evil. No. The non-Jewish world, as one of the 7 Noahide laws, they do have that obligation to set up a system of laws and to punish evildoers. Of course. They have the same mitzvah in some ways of staying away from acts of evil. But who can actually rectify, who can do something about it, who can make a difference? The Jewish people. How? Through the Torah. Only through the Torah can we defeat the koach of evil. Now, it's not only because we have the power to do it. The Jewish people need to do it because he's the one that will give us the hardest time with our job. Hu mafriya hagadol. He's the one that's giving us trouble. He's a troublemaker. So we better do something about it. We cannot allow him to exist. He's the one that interfering with our job more than anybody else in the world. How does he interfere with our job? How does Amalek give us a hard time? So the Torah, in telling us about our first contact with Amalek, it tells us, Asher karecha baderech. When you left Egypt, he met up with you. He met up with you in the way, and he already waged war against you. What does he want from us? We're not taking his land. We went away. We didn't want to have anything to do with him. He came after us. The commentaries tell us, Asher karecha baderech bli shum itgarut. When he came after us and waged war against us, is without any incitement on our part, without any aggression on our part. He did it on his own. Why? Something bothers him about us. He doesn't like us. What is there not to like about the Jew? That he has a long nose? I mean, what's wrong? What bothers him? You know what bothers Amalek about the Jew? The Jew believes in musar, morality, ethical, being good, being nice. That bothers him. Our Torah bothers him because he believes in the exact opposite. Anyone who read Mein Kampf from Hitler will find something interesting. He says very clearly that Jews brought about 2 blemishes on humanity. Does everybody understand what I mean by blemishes? 2 defects, 2 blemishes. One in the physical body through the Brit Milah, the circumcision, and one in the soul through something called conscience. Have a conscience. Don't don't do certain things because they will disturb your conscience. There's no such thing, he says. He claims that one should not feel bad about it, about certain things that one does. Do as you will. Who's to say there's a right and there's a wrong? That's Amalek. From his writings, you can clearly see the philosophy of Amalek, the teachings of Amalek that are totally opposed to what we are teaching. He obviously does not believe in God, and anything that has anything to do with God, he will oppose. The words Asher Karecha, even though literally it means that he came across you, he made up with you, it also means, the commentators explain, a form of krirut. He cooled you off. Amalek has the danger of cooling off a Jew from his emunah. Pouring cold water on us. To be cooled off from the emunah. Asher Karacha also comes from the word mikre. Everything is a coincidence. It was just a big bang. That's how the world was created. It was just by accident. Mikre, by chance. It was not divinely inspired. It was not by an act of God or creation. That is the philosophy of Amalek. Not to have anything to do with the teachings of the Torah, that there's a creator, that there's a boss who is involved in this world. His job, therefore, Amalek, is to move anybody who's attached to divinity or to doing acts of goodness, to move him away from that. And obviously the Jew is the greatest representative of acts of goodness that there is. In other words, the whole Torah, a lot of religions, a lot of laws of countries are taken from the Bible, from the Torah. So he is going to be our greatest enemy, Amalek says. The Jew. He is giving us a hard time. He is the one that's stopping us. He's introducing this thing called conscience and morality and values. And he doesn't want that. So therefore, we are his enemy and he is our arch enemy. He's very dangerous to the Jew, not just to the world, because his approach when it comes to emunah, to faith, is to cast doubt in anything. Amalek's approach, his tactic, is to cast doubt, to ask all kinds of questions and intentionally cast doubt. One way that he does it also is through letzanut, umitlotzetz. He makes a mockery of everything. That's another way he does it. Makes fun. Now the reason I'm emphasizing this is you have to realize something. You may find an individual out there in the street who doesn't appear to be your enemy, per se. He doesn't hate Jews. But he makes fun of Torah. He mocks what the Torah writes. That is a form of Amaleki. That is at least the midah, the characteristic of Amaleki. He doesn't have to be biologically Amaleki to believe what Amalek believes. So therefore, all of that approach, that attitude, that philosophy is dangerous to the Jew because of what it does, to cool us off. So how do you fight it? Well, remember something. When you're dealing with somebody who makes fun, a mocker, common sense will not be able to defeat him. Logic cannot defeat him. You have to stay away from him. Otherwise, he will defeat you. He will weaken you. You have no chance against him. Common sense is something precious to us. Isn't common sense, logic, reason, truth? No, not with a marker. You will not be able to win. Amalek has another face that is not very known unless you go back and read about Esav, the grandfather himself. What's the third face? The grandfather had the face of a Baal Ta'ava. He loved food. He had desires. He coveted. This Ta'ava is very much seen in the nation that Esav formed. Which nation did Esav form? Not Amalek. Remember, Amalek is a grandson. It is an offshoot somewhat. It is a descendant. It is the concentration of the bad. But Esav himself is not Amalek. Esav is the father of Edom, the Edomites. And there are a lot of nations in the world that belong to Edom. The Roman Empire is all Edom. They are related, aren't they? Grandfather and grandson. And where do you see it today? Where do you see the relationship today? Anybody know? No. We'll get to it soon. You will see that today it is possible to recognize who Amalek is and who is Edom. But I just wanted to wake up those of you who are maybe falling asleep that there is a big relationship that can be observed today between the grandfather and the grandson. In other words, even though Ba Sancheriv ubilbel et haolam, Sancheriv, the Syrian king, one of the Syrian kings, came and mixed up everybody, and Amalek is scattered everywhere, including in Iran. Haman Rasha, we just read about him. He's Migeza Amalek. What is Amalek doing in Iran? So Sancheriv came and mixed everybody up, moved everybody around. So we do have Amalek all over, but we will soon see who he is. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this face of Edom, because this is especially a problem in the generation of Mashiach, our generation. The problem with Ta'ava, with this face, is that any time a person espouses, supports Ta'avot, if this is important to him in his life, his heart rules his mind. His heart is basically being controlled by the Ta'avot. So therefore, his mind doesn't have a say. Therefore, any time the mind does not have too much of a say, the truth can never come out. Person who's engrossed in a materialistic kind of lifestyle, very much full of ta'avot, of desires, of food and drink and enjoyment in an unlimited way, it will be very difficult for him to come to terms with the truth, what we call the truth, because his heart is in control. When a person's heart is in control, his views can be easily distorted. Views, an intelligent man, he's an intelligent man. He has the faculties to be able to discern between right and wrong. But will he be able to? Will he succeed? No, not necessarily. Anytime a person has his own agenda, has his own personal interests, has all these physical desires of this world, he cannot think properly. His mind does not have full control over his heart. What we see so far is that Amalek is not only a nation, which I will tell you who it is soon. Amalek is also a midah. It is a form of life. It is a philosophy. It is a characteristic. It is something that it can exist even amongst Jews. Certain characteristics that really belong to Amalek. Therefore, the Jew, in being instructed to eradicate this Amalek, is being instructed to eradicate this from himself too. To eliminate any vestige, any characteristic that really does not belong to him, that it really is a form of evil, that is Amaleki nature. How does he do that? Only through the Torah mitzvot. Only by fulfillment of mitzvot, by studying the Torah, can he drive away these midot. Okay, Now that we know how bad Amalek is, what he stands for, what he's trying to promote, now we've really come to one of the biggest questions of tonight. Why be so cruel to him? Get rid of all of him, men, women, and children. Ugh. Some people accuse us of being those who believe in genocide, chas v'shalom. And that's what this is calling for, right? Being so cruel, sadistic. Let me share with you a story, a true story, that happened, I would say, over 100 years ago. In a small village in Europe, on a very cold winter night, there was a woman who was about to give birth. She was very ill. I think she had high temperature. And she was close to death. I mean, it was a very precarious situation. She had not too much help. And somebody, of course, ran to get a doctor. The doctor finally arrived, even though it was very, very difficult. He struggled until he came. It was cold, snowing. He finally arrived in the home and delivered the baby boy. After he delivered the baby, he cut it up in pieces. Cut it up in pieces, stepped on it, and threw it in the garbage. What would you say to this doctor? Is he cruel? Huh? What would you say? Did he do a good thing, a bad thing? What does this kind of an act appear to you? What? Evil? Yeah. Well, what if I were to tell you that that baby was Hitler? Would you still say the doctor is evil for doing that? He had knowledge. This is a true story, but the baby wasn't cut up. We wish he was. The baby survived. The doctor was Jewish. He didn't know what he was delivering. But had he known, if he would have cut him up, he would be fulfilling a mitzvah. Wouldn't he? Okay. Baruch Hashem, we all agree on something. Because now you will understand this story, which is a true story, except for the cutting up, will help you understand what the Medrash says about why we are so cruel. We are cruel to Amalek. We need to be. Because that is exactly what they would do to us if they had a chance. If they had a chance, if Amalek has a chance, he would destroy the Jewish people, chas v'shalom. If you don't believe me, look at the story of Haman. That's exactly what he attempted to do. No, not just the men, women, and children. And throughout history, there were pogroms and attempts and plots to carry out exactly that by those who come from Amalek. And just recently, what about Hitler himself? Didn't he try to do that too? You see, only the men, women, and children, babies. He didn't care. If we do not do it to him, he will do it to us. So is that being cruel to him, or is that self-defense? The Torah tells us, listen, you got to do it because he's going to do it to you. Now, this is not Yishmael. What's Yishmael? Yishmael, the Midrash says, listen, when he was thrown out of the house of Abraham and Sarah, you know the story with Hagar? He was sick, he was about to die. The Malach, the angel, showed her a well of water. Go give him a drink. His life was saved. The angels got upset. Hashem, why are you saving Yishmael? He's going to be a troublemaker in the future to your children. So Hashem says, when did you say? In the future? Yeah. But what about now? Is he okay now? Yeah, now he's all right. Well, I'm going to judge him by what he is now. I don't judge him by what his descendants and his children are going to do. What is he to blame? But not Amalek. Amalek, from the very beginning, has that built-in hatred. He is the concentration of hatred. It's all there. It's not some good and some bad. Okay, I'll think about it. This time I'll let you go. No, this is the concentration of evil, the greatest evil, the arch enemy of the Jew. What difference does it make if it's a baby or if it's an adult? It's the same thing. This baby will eventually be an adult, and this baby will eventually try to harm you. Do it to him before he does it to you. And you better do it, because he is your enemy, sworn enemy. So because he is your sworn enemy, guess what? He has to be to you a sworn enemy too. You understand? That's the idea, the basic idea of why there's no pity whatsoever. But what about the animals? Well, animals can easily steer our feelings. Well, they didn't do anything wrong, poor animals. Look at all these animal lovers running all over the world to save the whales. Well, they're doing a good thing. You know, I actually think that they have the right to do so. You know, whales are not fish. There's only a limited numbers of them. Fish have a blessing. They will never become extinct. You know why Hashem gave a blessing to the fish, that they should never become extinct? Because the Japanese are going to eat sushi. So there has to be a blessing and an abundance of fish. But that is not to say that all other animals have the blessing, and animals can become extinct. Anyway, so why get rid of these poor animals? Hashem did not want to leave any opening whatsoever for pity on anything that belongs or is associated to Amalek. Oh, what a waste. Let's keep the animals. That's the mistake Shaul Amalek. Shaul the king made this mistake, the first king of the Jews. A righteous man, a saintly man. But he had cheshbonot. It was politics. Cheshbonot, politics. All kinds of calculations of why yes, why not, why save him, maybe yes, maybe not. He started making derashot in his mind about why it's okay. And Shemuel says, you made a terrible mistake. You went against God's will. Why did you allow your own cheshbonot, your own calculations to interfere? He lost the malchut. He lost the position of being king. He was killed with his children. But worse than that, the rabbis tell us whoever has pity on the cruel will eventually become cruel on those who deserve compassion. Shaul Amalek had pity on Amalek. He eventually was driven crazy by some spirit that unfortunately made him so crazy and so cruel and sadistic that he killed off an entire city of Kohanim, Nov, Ira Kohanim. How come? How does this happen? Rabbi tells you, if you are compassionate, you have pity for the cruel, you will eventually be cruel over the pity, over those who you need to have pity for and compassion. How come? Through this mitzvah of Mechiyat Amalek, of eliminating Amalek, or erasing his name, Hashem wants us to remember that the best way to love what Hashem loves is to hate what Hashem hates. If you hate what Hashem hates, you will come to love what Hashem loves. That's the way the system works. In order to truly love what Hashem loves, you have to hate what He truly hates. And Hashem hates Amalek. Yes. Oh. That is one of the commandments. I'll talk about that in a minute. Yeah. So what's needed to defeat Amalek? We said logic doesn't work, common sense does not work. He mocks, he ridicules, he opposes. The way to defeat Amalek, we said, of course, is with the Torah. That's for ourselves, to control ourselves, to have the right outlook. But the way to defeat him, other than physical defeat, is through emunah peshuta, through simple emunah. In other words, not to ask questions, too much questions, not to have any doubts. There are many things we don't understand, many things that we will never know throughout our life. Does that mean we should stop doing what we're doing? A Jew, in order to survive as a Jew spiritually, needs to have emunah peshuta, simple emunah. I believe in God because I know this is good for me. I know He exists. I don't understand everything, but I know it's for my own benefit. He created the world. He gave me this formula, this lifestyle. Any Jew that used philosophy and logic to try to explain Judaism did not withstand the pressures of the Inquisition. Rabbis tell us that during the Inquisition there were many great learned people. They are the ones who succumbed to the pressure. Many of them, not all of them, many of them succumbed to the pressures of the Inquisition. They couldn't take the torture. They couldn't take the pressures. because their emunah was logical, was common sense, and that did not help them. The pressure overrode their that kind of emunah. The emunah, in order for it to survive, it has to be pure, it has to be simple. Of course, you're supposed to understand as much as possible and use common sense to understand the mitzvot. But you have to be very, very careful. That which we don't understand, we accept anyway. Otherwise, during times of pressure, people can break if their emunah is not a simple, pure emunah. Therefore, when it comes to arguing with Amalek, be very, very careful. Don't argue with him. You're not going to win the argument. Remember, he's your arch enemy. He represents evil. You have to either eliminate him, otherwise he will eliminate you. And when I say he will eliminate you, it doesn't have to happen physically. There are a lot of Jews who, I'd rather not use the word eliminated, but have been totally assimilated to the Amalek type of lifestyle, that they're almost gone. So if you don't defeat him, if you don't wage war against him, you don't remind yourself of that, of what he represents, you chas v'shalom have the chance of being assimilated. Therefore, since assimilation is part of learning from the ways of Amalek, the Torah tells us, Zachor ve'al tishkach. Two things. Not only do you have to destroy him whenever you can, you may not always have the chance to destroy him physically, wage war against him. You're not always in control. You live in the galut, in the diaspora. Can you do it? Okay, this is an Amalek. I'm going to get rid of him. You're going to go to jail. You can't do it. So how do you do it? Zachor ve'al tishkach. There are times that the way to eliminate him is to remind yourself. Remind yourself in two ways. By saying it, Zachor, verbally, talk about it, read about it. This will remind you. And lo lishkoach, not to forget. What does lo lishkoach mean? What's the difference between not forgetting and saying it? There's a lot of people who come to terms with certain situation. Okay, it's not the same as it was 1,000 years ago. The Romans are no longer around. This is not Germany. This is not Poland of back then. This is not the same Russian. This is not the same Egyptians, right? There are people who will always look back and say, well, let's just make peace with them. Let's befriend them. They're more civilized today, right? Haven't you heard these things? No. Torah says, no. Al tishkach, don't come to terms with, don't let your heart be appeased and complacent, actually, I should say, with Amalek. It's a force that is going to be around forever. They're always going to be around. You can't say they have changed their colors. They haven't changed their colors. Man forgets very easily. Man is very forgetful. Rabbis tell us, you know why mourning over one's parent only lasts for 12 months? Because a dead, deceased person, it could have been your own parent. After 12 months, you haven't completely forgotten, but the pain is dissipated after 12 months. So only mourning for 12 months. Man forgets, God does not forget. We forget, we don't realize what they perpetrated against us throughout history. We're lucky we have some videos and pictures from the Holocaust. That's recent. There was already the technology to record, and they themselves recorded it for us. They themselves recorded it for us. But do we have pictures of what the Romans did? Of what Chmielnicki Machshemo did in the year 1648 and 1649 in the Ukraine and in Poland? What about the Crusades? On two occasions, what they did when they overran many Jewish communities on their way to Israel throughout Europe. The slaughters of the Inquisition. Do we have pictures of that? No, people forget. Unfortunately, people forget. And that forgetfulness, unfortunately, is also part of Amalek. It's engendered by Amalek because we said before in the very beginning, Amalek cools us off. And the way he cools us off is he cools off our enthusiasm to do the service of Hashem. And it's therefore very, very important not to show apathy or indifference towards this danger that it always exists. Because Chas v'Shalom, if a Jew is cooled off from his connection to Hashem, he's being defeated by Amalek. In other words, not only is he not doing the job of defeating Amalek, he's being defeated by Amalek. And that is what the Torah reminds us. When will Amalek come after you? When will he have any power over you? V'ata yef v'yagia. When you will express yourself, oh, I'm tired. It's such a big burden for me to carry all these mitzvot. Anybody that says it's hard to be a Jew, and there is a saying like that in Yiddish, it's not true, by the way. It's not hard to be a Jew. It's very easy. Tefillin takes a few minutes every day. Making a blessing is no big deal. Shabbat, you rest anyway. What's so difficult? It's just an excuse. Anybody who ever expresses himself, it's so hard. The Torah says, "Vata yef v'yageh siman ve'lo yareh Elokim." It's an indicator that there's not enough God-fearing in you. Anybody who says it's difficult, oh, I can't do it, I'm tired. Vata yef v'yageh ve'lo yareh Elokim. That's the continuation of the verse. It's talking about Amalek too. He's not a God-fearing individual, but it could also be talking about the Jew. Anytime the Jew becomes disconnected from the Torah, that's when Amalek has any power over us. That's what Yitzchak told his own son Esav. Esav, don't feel so bad, don't cry. Yaakov took your firstborn rights. He can only hold on to that. He can only have the credit of that if he follows the Torah mitzvot. Vayaki tarid ufarakta ulo mal tzavarecha. You know when your chance will come to control, to be the boss? When he removes the burden of Torah from himself, you can remove the burden of being subservient to him. You will not be subservient to him if he's not subservient to God. He cannot have anything of this world. He's supposed to have the world to come. He wants to enjoy this world too. He wants to have peace of mind and quiet down here too. All the benefits of Olam Hazeh, it's only if he follows the Torah. If not, you will take back your rights. Esav therefore attacks, causes us trouble whenever the Jewish nation is turned away from the Torah, when the Jewish nation cooling off with the midah of Amalek, to be cooled off from the emunah. Okay, so now we come to the question, so who is he? Who is he today? Rabbis tell us that there will be a nation in the world, right before Mashiach comes, that we will be able to recognize from their character and their behavior who he is. And the answer is very clear. It's Germany. Commentaries talk about how the concentration of Amalek is mostly in that country. Does it come as a surprise? No. You can see for yourself what they did and what they're capable of doing. But there is Amalek all over the world. Amalek is everywhere. And because of that, we will have something called Milchemet Gog uMagog. Even though we can talk a long time just about this final war, which B'ezrat Hashem at some point I'll give a separate lecture, the last war called Gog uMagog is very much misunderstood by a lot of people. Who is it exactly? Even though Yechezkel speaks about a assembly of many nations. It's not just one or two countries. They may have one head. What's this assembly of nations coming against the Jews right before Mashiach comes, at the time Mashiach arrives? The assembly of the nations against the Jews is the assembly that Hashem is putting together of all the evil sparks that are scattered all over the world, in all these nations that contain Amalek, leva'er otam me'aolam, to destroy them and completely eliminate the Ra once and for all. Hashem will do it. Now he hasn't been doing it because he wants us to do it. It is our job to drive evil away. But eventually, Hashem of course will do it. Hashem, when he gathers all these nations in the world to come against Israel, against the Jews, he's gathering all the nations that have concentrations of evil. Nations that have perpetrated evil against the Jews in the past, that we have forgotten about them. Oh, you mean Luxembourg is too involved in this? Well, maybe Luxembourg has something to do with it too. We don't know. Hashem knows. We forget. Human beings forget. Hashem does not forget. He knows where every spot where Jewish blood was spilled. He remembers it. Every soul, everybody, everything. So therefore, as the Zohar explains, in the final assembly of nations against the Jewish people that is going to come very soon, we have reincarnated souls of Goyim too, reincarnated souls of non-Jews that will come because we have to see in their fall. We've never seen the revenge, we've never seen their fall. People have just died, disappeared, went away. Hashem says, no, they're not forgotten. You're going to see it. I'm going to bring them all together. So he's bringing them together in the final day of judgment to judge them. There has not been justice done till now. Now you can understand one of the questions we started off asking was, why isn't Hashem's kiseh, his seat of justice, intact, complete? Ki yad al kes yam milchama b'Hashem Ba'amalek, milchama. Every door in every generation that Hashem has a milchama ba'amalek. Why? Because he says incomplete. Incomplete meaning that all these years we have rampant violence, evil. Mishtolel, chogeg, it's rampant. Where is the justice? People are asking, where is God? It's unfair. How come people who are so good are suffering? How come the righteous Jews have gone through so much pain and suffering? Where is all the justice? If God exists, how could he allow this Holocaust to take place? You've heard these questions? That's the face of evil being exposed in such a way that people are concerned. Where is it? But there is justice. Hashem has a plan. He's been hiding his face. But eventually his face, of course, he doesn't have a face, but his presence will be known. And that is when his chair, his seat of justice will be intact. In other words, right now it's not intact. What it means is that people do not see the justice. There is, but they don't see it, so it's not intact. It will become intact and complete when he reveals himself. When we say, Vayah Hashem melech al kol haaretz, God will be the king over the entire universe, that is when this will happen, that all evil will cease to exist. All evil will disappear. There will be no evil. When evil ceases to exist, guess what happens? The truth comes out automatically. Right now the truth is being buried or confused, not allowed to become prominent. All these non-Jewish schools here have a hard time even putting in the books of biology other than evolution. Oh, by the way, there's an opinion that God created the world. Oh no, chas v'shalom, separation, church from state. Don't mention the word God in any book in public school. Never. Okay, let them give their opinion. It's just an opinion. No. We're going to give only our opinion, the opinion of Amalek. Evolution, you came from a monkey. You came from nothing, from a big bang. That's what they want you to hear. When, of course, all the powers of evil cease to exist, then the truth will become obvious. What's the difference between Edom and Amalek? We spoke about Edom being the grandfather of Amalek. Amalek is Germany, so who's Edom? Edom includes most of Europe. It includes the United States of America. It's the Roman Empire that was never destroyed. How do we see it? Look at World War II especially. Edom is Italy. That was the seat of the Roman Empire. And who was the friend of Germany? The best friend of Germany was Italy. Isn't that funny? Italians and Germans should be friends. What does pizza have to do with Volkswagen? Right? What does Italy have to do with Germany? If you think about it, they're very opposites. The Germans are yekes, cold. When it comes to being nice and friendly, the Italians are very, very different. Warm-blooded, completely different. What does an Italian have to do with a German? If you tell me Austria, you tell me France, I can still understand. I can better understand England being a friend of Germany than Italy. But for those who don't understand that Italy is the seat of the Roman Empire of Edom, even though Edom is scattered, many other nations today that speak Latin languages, that have something of the Roman Empire, including America, they are first. So Edom is everywhere, and the United States of America is also part of Edom. So what will be the end of Amalek? The end of Amalek is as it's written in Parshat Balak, V'acharito adeh oved. In the end, Amalek will be destroyed. In the end, all forces of evil will be destroyed. And this, of course, will happen, B'ezrat Hashem, in our generation. Now, how do I know it will happen now, soon? Rabbis tell us that the Jewish people received 3 mitzvot upon entering the land of Israel. The mitzvah of choosing a king, the mitzvah of destroying any vestige of Amalek, and the mitzvah of building the Bet HaMikdash. We have entered the land. There is an ingathering taking place right now. What's going to happen soon? We're going to have a king, Melech HaMashiach. We have to have a Bet HaMikdash. So we know that the destruction of Amalek is imminent. Just that until now, we had the mitzvah, every Jew. Now, of course, it will come about through Mashiach. But this will be part of the process. There's only one problem in all this process. Amalek is going to put up a big fight. If you look back through history, when does Amalek put up the biggest fight? Whenever the Jews come back to Israel. First time around, when Yaakov came back to Israel, Esav meets him. That's the first encounter. Second encounter, when the Jews leave Egypt on their way to Israel, who meets them? Amalek again. Third encounter, the Jews are about to return to Israel after the Babylonian exile. Who gives them trouble? Haman. The Jews are about to come back to Israel for the last time. And who stops them or makes them trouble? Again, Amalek. Germany, Holocaust. All the times, the major encounters with Amalek was right before we come to Israel. Because they know they're going to be destroyed. There's an accusation, Chas v'shalom, against the Jews. What power do they have? Why should they be allowed to come? There's a tremendous commotion upstairs in the heavenly courts between this tremendous power, this powerful minister called Sarosh el Amalek. I don't even want to say his name. Very powerful. He's not going to give in so easily. A third of the Jewish people were killed in this Holocaust. A third of 18 million Jews before World War II, 18 million. 12 million remained. You know what it is? He got away with a third? This is not just a few thousand Jews here and there. This is 6 million. Nobody can do that. Only Amalek has that kind of power. But he's not going to get away with it. We know that soon it will be his turn to be destroyed. But in the meantime, there's a tremendous amount of a struggle between the forces of good and evil all over the world. I'd like to end that in order to be able to be on the side of good and not evil, as you know, one of the things that is the most difficult during the days of Mashiach is emunah, that we spoke about, having pure faith, relying in Hashem. One of the things that can help us avoid falling into the trap of Amalek is to stay away from gava, from arrogance. Arrogance, unfortunately, has not allowed many, many Jews to get closer to Judaism. In order to really see the truth and the beauty in the Torah and Judaism, you have to be a little bit humble. Wait a minute, this made so much sense to my forefathers. They were willing to give their lives. Doesn't it deserve a fair chance to be examined? What's holding people back is either they're very arrogant, they think that they're smarter than their forefathers, and they consider their forefathers primitives, or they have the midot of Amalek that we said before. They have the ta'ava. They have the desires, the pleasures that they want to enjoy from this world. Anybody who's already assimilated into the lifestyle of Amalek is going to have a hard time. But if he's humble, at least if he's humble, he has a better chance. He's going to say to himself, wait a minute, I'm not smarter necessarily than they were. There were a lot of great giants, rabbis who were so smart, who knew everything. They deserve a chance too. So a person who's humble has a chance to do teshuvah. A person who's arrogant will not have an easy chance. And that is why it's not surprising that one of the things that Hashem brings about before Mashiach comes is the collapse of the economy. The collapse of the economy is because money has made people arrogant. Money is a source of ta'avot, of desires and pleasures. All of that is the koach of Amalek. And Hashem is about to destroy that koach, and he begins with the money, that golden calf that unfortunately many Jews have worshipped, or many Jews at least were misled by. That assimilation that has occurred now has cooled a lot of Jews' emunah, faith in him, because they're too busy making money. Money, I need a home, I need a latest car. All this is Amalek. And unfortunately, many Jews got caught up in this. So Hashem says, listen, I'm about to destroy all of that. And he begins with money. So it's important to be very, very careful these days with having the right emunah, the right approach, the right attitude. Not the attitude of Amalek, but the simple and pure attitude of doing what is good and right in the eyes of Hashem. And I'd like to end to remind every one of us that Amalek, remember, is not only a nation, it's a midah. It's a characteristic that everyone can, Chas v'shalom, possess. And it's incumbent upon every one of us to eliminate that, to work on ourselves, to refine our character, that there's no Amalek left. Because everyone, every human being, not just Jews, every human being has some concentration of goodness in him. And it is up to him to reveal that goodness, but through acts of goodness and kindness. When we reveal the good in us, when we do acts of kindness in the world, then that itself, B'ezrat Hashem, will give the power to the forces of goodness to defeat the forces of evil and darkness. B'ezrat Hashem, through an increase in acts of goodness, in acts of brotherliness and unity, in being kind to one another, we will be able to increase that power of goodness in the entire world. and also have the merit of seeing a Kadosh Baruch Hu destroying or vanquishing all the forces of evil from the face of the earth. Be'ezat Hashem, I have a strong feeling that the time has finally arrived. This is not 1920, 1930, 1940, 1950. This is not year 2000. We're 2009. We've become very, very close to this moment. We're living through very, very turbulent times. And those who will survive, Be'ezat Hashem, will be those who have strong emunah and clarity that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the boss. And soon, that clarity will reach the entire world when Hashem, Be'ezat Hashem, will be king. Vaya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz, vayom hahu yeh Hashem echad, u'shmo echad. Amen.